Facebook friends, Marianne here. I want to take a moment to talk to you guys about two things, empathy and apathy. We all are capable of them and they cancel each other out. And I've been really quiet, and some of you guys may have noticed I've been sharing things about on the news, passing along video and stuff, but I've been really holding back on doing one of these kind of little opinionated selfie videos for a while, and there's a reason for that. And that's because there's so much happening right now. It's like boom, 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 boom right in our nation that I really needed to take the time to sit, listen, and think. And I think that's something that's not happening enough right now. When we're all emotionally riled up, it's really easy to want to react. They insulted me. React. That happened. React. I need to do this now. I'm freaking out. React, react, react. And the irony is that when we're in that mentality, we don't react wisely and we lose our power. Right now, the anger that we're seeing all over this nation is righteous anger. Long time coming. Good reasons for it. Well-founded anger. But it's often powerless anger. Now, what happens is many people mistake force of might for power. Now, sure, when you're in a war zone, you're going to see the bombs landing on top of you as power. So that's one type of power. But there are other types of power too. And one of the most important, in fact, I think the most important type of power that any human being can have is the power of our mentality. Now, it's really, really overrated and said, and it's made too simple. And people say, I can say whatever I want to say, and it's your choice to be able to, how you take it. Well, no. That's getting rid of personal responsibility and how we react with others. And no, saying, oh, you're too sensitive if somebody says something really, really out of the way, mean and rude and all that. No, I'm not talking about that. What I am saying is that when the whole world is going crazy, which we're all seeing right now, and all of our minds are just going zoom like crazy, we are trying very hard to catch our breaths. In fact, I could say from an organizational psychology point of view, we're all in a state of shock. Shock doesn't mean that your heart is palpitating. Shock can mean that you find yourself feeling absolutely calm, almost eerily so, and you're wondering, why is this not affecting me emotionally as much as it should? And you're able to just do 1, 2, 3, one foot in front of the other, but you're also finding you're not necessarily feeling the joy you might normally get out of seeing your favorite TV show, or the enjoyment out of your favorite ice cream flavor, or maybe you enjoy jogging or dancing or any of those things that you like. They're just not giving you that oomph that you usually get. Well, all those are symptoms essentially of shock. So, and the same kind of thing happens with depression. Sometimes we delve into this kind of state in order to not get depressed. So we start going, okay, why am I not feeling things deeply? Why am I just coasting along? And it's kind of like a brain's way of saying, oh, we're not going there. It's hard to dig ourselves out of depression. We're not going to go down there this time. So anyway, the reason I'm sharing all this is because obviously there's a lot of anger, and those things are obvious. There's a lot of sadness. Those things are obvious. But I think a lot of people are feeling some of the other things that I just described. And I want you to be reassured that it's not that you don't care. It's that you're in a state of shock. So anyway, now that we covered that little thing, I want to go back into, again, empathy and apathy. Now, there is no greater, and I've said this many, many times, I've written an essay on it, I've said speeches around the world, that the greatest enemy of peace is apathy. A lot of people think that it's evil. Nah, you can have one evil person. And as people often said, what would have happened if everyone said, oh, that Hitler, he's crazy, whatever. We wouldn't have had a Holocaust. Point is that it's apathetic people that allow it to happen. Now, MLK once said, it's that nice person. There are plenty of nice people that just mind their little lives, do their little thing, and they're all being nice. They're too nice to get involved. They're too nice to do this or to do that. They're just nice. Well, that's another way of saying apathy. being apathetic. Okay, well, I'm going to be in my little world, and all this ruckus has nothing to do with me. I'm just in my little world. Don't need to know about that. Don't need to be involved in that. Has nothing to do with me. Well, obviously that mentality, those who have it, have never heard of Pastor Niemöller. And of course, many of you have heard that poem, in a very abridged, non-beautifully dramatic version that I'm about to share with you. Essentially is, they came for those people. I didn't speak up for them because I wasn't one of those people. They came for these people. I didn't speak up for these people because I wasn't one of these people. And he goes from all the way from, people that were the handicapped, people that were gay, people that were Jewish, people that were the gypsies, the Roma, the people that were sick, people that were older. He goes through this whole list. And then at the end he says, and now they're coming up the stairs for me, and there's no one left to speak for me. And I know I've been speaking out loud a lot about this Trump presidency, and some of you really wince when I call it a regime. But I do call it a regime, and I don't do it haphazardly either, because when you have a presidency, there are equal sides that are all vying for their personal agenda and how they feel, what they think is important. And they have equal say, and they debate it out in a public forum. Things are not forced, and all are treated equally in terms of having a voice, in terms of having a podium. However, when you have people that have usurped a government to the point that certain demographics are isolated. You've heard me talk about having to have my passport, pulling it out. You've heard me, I wrote a chapter in a book on the 50 migrant women, whatever. And one of the people, because I was in charge of the USA chapter and talking about people's experiences as immigrants, I interviewed my friend Tessa Mujica. She's beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed, gorgeous Basque woman. She was the executive VP of a multinational corporation, 7-figure salary, top of her game, dressed elegantly and beautifully, and walking her way, through the Highland Park Village, shopping. And as she went through there, her mother called her, obviously speaking in Spanish. Tessa picks it up, starts speaking in Spanish. Someone comes over to her, ends up being a cop, and says, "Hey, you're speaking in Spanish. I need to see your passport." She didn't have it. He made her drive from the Highland Park Village all the way to her apartment and pull out the passport. That's when you know that there's something different. When I go to my mother's house and I have to show a passport. When I know to go to the grocery store, I have to show a passport. Have that on me in case I'm asked. It's a new reality. And I shared this with some people. I'm like, whatever, it's not affecting me. I had some Asian friends who said, not affecting me. And I said, this will eventually affect you. You've got people that are Southeastern Asian. People have actually asked me before if I was Malaysian. I said, trust me. People asked me if I was Indian, from India. Hell, wrong Indian. But, as I explained this to everybody, people always, say, well, it's not happening to me. Why did this happen? Why would I bother with this? And then I've had people that operate food pantries, homeless shelters. And I showed up and said, if we catch you serving a little kid that doesn't have their papers, we'll take you in. Suddenly, Pastor Niemöller sounding really relevant. So, I'm not picking on that one. I'm trying to give you a demonstration that to some of you, this seems to come out of nowhere. It's not coming out of nowhere. We've been seeing this kind of thing. And all that came on the heels of Standing Rock. Those of us that went up there, we got to see as our country allowed for individual corporations to hire Blackwater, it's what they were back then, I don't know what they're called now, to bring in, private militias to come in and, fight and harass the people. And they were okay with it. And we told them, if you're comfortable with rubber bullets and tear gas, pepper spray being aimed at American citizens, over a dispute regarding water that is eventually going to make its way all the way down from the Dakotas, all the way down through a good majority of the United States, for so many different states rely on it, on that stream for their water, that river for their water, then you're going to start seeing, if you're okay with that, it's going to be like the proverbial frog in a boiling pot, where you start slowly, inching that heat up and heating up a little further, a little further, a little further, and the frog doesn't realize it's burning alive, boiling alive. That's what started happening. You're like, oh, well, that's a reservation. That's way over there. That's those people. Well, people that were comfortable with that, and at the time I complained. I shared it with some of my Hispanic friends. Whatever. That's those people. Then the passports happened with the Hispanics. Then, I told this to my Asian friends. Now they start getting harassed. Then when the coronavirus came, they really started getting harassed. All these different people. Again, it's like, oh, it's not me. It's not having anything to do with me. When we tried to arrange to have people in the Dallas area, local spiritual leaders be trained on how to handle it if I showed up in their place of worship, they all said, it's not going to happen to us. Meanwhile, I have a friend of mine, Rabbi Joshua Stanton, up there in New York. He has a lot of Ethiopian Jews in his congregation. I showed up. He was trained, so he knew exactly what to say in order to try and make ICE go away. And thankfully, because he knew what to do, thanks to Robbie Rigbeer's training, they did. They left because he knew it'd be able to look, this isn't filled out correctly. You don't have the correct warrant. You got to go. But the point is, we're starting to see this pattern. It starts moving further, a little further, a little further, a little further. I shared this story with people down here. They said, oh, please, the government is never going to harass people here in our neighborhoods. It's not, that's up in New York. I said, you got to understand. Again, Pastor Niemöller, it's saying it has nothing to do with me. It's just those people is the exact phrase that people have used time and time again all over this world. And the more comfortable you are with your neighbor's oppression, the easier you allow yourself to become oppressed. Let me explain that again. The more comfortable you are with your neighbor's oppression, the easier you allow yourself to become oppressed. It's really simple. My freedoms, my human rights, my civil rights, all of that is completely wrapped up in you and your civil rights and your human rights. Now, you and I can disagree on 100%, but if you don't have your human rights, you don't have your civil rights, that means that there is a little hole inside our laws, inside our federal government, inside our state government, inside our city government, that is a threat to my own well-being. That's what we're being tested at here. And we're being given this test, and I'm going to move to something a little more spiritual now. We're being given this test in a very deep way, both with coronavirus and in terms of our politics. In terms of our politics, it's about human rights, knowing that our well-being completely relies on each other's, knowing that our freedoms completely rely on each other's. Now, when we look at the coronavirus, talk about a perfect metaphor. We wear a mask, not because it prevents me from catching what you have, but it prevents me from passing what I might have picked up to you. If I'm wearing a mask, that is telling any one of you that sees me out there on the streets wearing a mask that I care about you, that I give a damn about you. No matter how, if I don't know you from Adam, if I hate you, but I'm wearing a mask when I see you, guess what? I'm still showing that I care about your well-being, because who knows? I could have been exposed to something, and without meaning for it, make you sick. When you wear a mask, you're saying, I recognize that we're in this together and your well-being matters. So here we have, in a beautiful, ironic metaphor that we're all struggling with as a nation. And as if we're not getting that right, now we're all looking at the injustices that have been visited upon African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans. This is getting louder and louder and louder. And I know that a lot of our friends are like, God, can't this just go away? Can't we get back to life like normal? Well, do you want the old normal? Because a lot of us don't want the old normal. I would like to live in a world where when I go into a jewelry store, And I realized that all of those little display cases and the little things that the earrings and rings are all displayed on, I happen to own a fourth of that company that makes them. And I wanted to go in and see, let's see how this store is using the product that my company is making. So I go in to go and take a look at it, and I get followed by a cop all the way through making figure. And I just started having fun with them. I started making little figure eights. I was demonstrating it actually for my husband. The store used to be out at North Park. And he was like, they don't fall. He said, trust me, watch. And by the time I'd made my third figure eight, Joshua was just in shock. And, you know, I started having fun with this cop, just doing all sorts of stuff, going all over the place, and he followed me everywhere. But that's the point. I joke about it, but I'd like to live in a world where that isn't so. And I've gotten used to that. I got used to it because, one, it was exhausting to fight that stuff. Which was like, ugh, I just want to get on with my day. I don't want to have an encounter. If every minority fought about every single thing that happened to them, that's all they'd be doing all day. We wouldn't get anything done. We wouldn't have a career, you know, whatever. We wanted to go on with our lives. A lot of us who are older feel that way in general because we've marched, we've protested, we've shouted, we've published, we've spoken to crowds of thousands. Yes, done all the above. And it's exhausting. And that brings me to the other thing. You know, I was sharing this with some friends of mine that were on the board of an organization I have great respect for recently. And they're all much, much older than me. And yeah, you know, I'm 43. And so, you know, I'm a lot older than a lot of these younger protesters. And so I was trying to explain to some of these people who are in their 60s and whatnot. And I said, look, you know, because they had just said, we need to tell these people, you know, we got to tell these Black Lives Matter people this. We got to tell these Antifa people this. We need them to know. And I said, okay, whoa, hold up a minute. I'm not a fan of Antifa at all. I really am not. But I have friends who are in Antifa. And if you want change, then instead of saying, we need to tell them, no, what you need to do is you need to pause and listen. Because what those young people are saying is that they're tired of being the bigger person. The bigger person is the one that understands things. If you're a woman, you've dealt with that before. You've been with a man and been like, who's been very misogynistic in one way or another, and you've had to make the mental choice. Do I deal with this straight on? Do I just ignore it and move along? You know, maybe you are an expert, you got your doctorate in something, and you have a man that actually says, oh, don't worry your pretty little head about that, and then starts lecturing you about a topic that you're much more proficient and knowledgeable and experienced in, and he dismisses it because you're a woman. Or, you know, maybe you are a Black person and you're trying to walk down the street, and someone else comes up and they're a white person and they won't move, and it's very obvious because of the direction that you're walking in and the direction they're walking in. It would make a lot more sense for them to just kind of step to the side. Maybe you have a bunch of packages in your arms or something, but they absolutely refuse and force you to be the one to move off the sidewalk. I'm just sharing these small things because we've been looking at a whole lot of real in-your-face violent stuff. But what adds up to that is when society gets comfortable and complacent with all these tiny little things that require minorities, whether you're being a woman, whether it is your race, whether it's your sexual orientation, to be the understanding one, to be the one that goes, okay, let me explain. Or that says, you know, or that swallows it and takes it in. And maybe you only speak about it once every 3 days when it really matters, because damn it, you got to work with this person to get this job done. And you know, you need to try and reestablish the parameters so you get along with them so you can both be more productive. And everything else, whether it's social, whether it's just out running errands, you don't want to delve into that then and there. Also, you may become nervous because some people, when asked about, they get really irate and really loud and aggressive, and it can be scary. Well, having to always make those decisions is like being in a bad relationship. I'm sure every one of us has been in a relationship where you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time. You're like, oh, can't say that. Ooh, better not do that. Ooh, can't look at that. Wait, what kind of expression do I have on my face? Okay, they're going to explode if I do that. And most of us think, ooh, that's toxic. Let's get away from that. But what would happen if you imagined yourself always having to be like that? Always having to be the one on eggshells when dealing with positions of leadership. That's what minorities feel. And that's that tension, generations of it, that's erupting. And we all have to be understanding and compassionate about that. And we have to reach out and say, okay, I get that you've been dealing with this. I hear you. And I'm not saying you have to agree even. I'm saying we all have to be able to go, I'm going to be quiet here. I'm going to sit. I'm going to think. I'm going to listen. I'm going to receive. And if those young people are really angry, then I need to understand why. And the why is because they don't want to put up with the things that my generation and those before me have put up with. When I was in school, it was really common for me in dating white people to be spat on when I went to North Park. That was very normal. And it wasn't just from white people. It could be from Hispanic people that didn't approve of interracial dating. That doesn't happen anymore. Things changed. There is progress to be made. When I was adopted, my parents presented me to a bunch of their friends and the Dallas socialites of the time. That would have been 1977. They said half of their guests got up and left in protest because it was an interracial adoption. Now I see interracial adoptions all the time. We are progressing, and it may not seem like that, but we are progressing. Now I'm deeply blessed to work with my friend, Peter Johnson, and he told me about how he met with my father at the Stoneleigh P and how they split a burger, and how the simple act of splitting a burger and talking about how to embrace and enhance opportunities for African Americans in business was so revolutionary and a protest in itself, because they did it in a place that at that time was completely segregated and didn't allow Black people to eat there. Eating a burger. Recently, when I brought all those, or attempted to bring so many spiritual leaders in, and my wonderful friend Neil, Neil Thomas over at the Cathedral of Hope, let us use this space for the meeting, we got such a small group there. And Peter had invited so many people from the African American community. And it largely came back to us that 60 had decided not to show up because, it's an LGBT church. And Peter said this was an amazing opportunity because it allowed him to call each one of them up and have a heart-to-heart with 60 different ministers and said, you cannot stand up for human rights and against oppression for yourselves and do the opposite for others. When we live in a democracy, it only works when we understand that our human rights are completely interdependent. And now that we live in a fully globalized society where our economies are interconnected, where the environment reactions by everything we all do cumulatively is interconnected, we are responsible. We are our brother and sister's keeper. Now, a lot of people talk about, in biblical terms, the sins of the father visited upon the son. They look at it in this kind of like the father did all this and the son has to pay. I think we should look at it differently. The sins of the father are visited upon the son. The sins of the mother are visited upon the daughter. The sins of the past are visited upon us because we are responsible for doing better. And that needs to be seen not as a judgment, not as a punishment, but as a privilege. It is a privilege to be part of the United States of America in this time, because we are tomorrow's ancestors, and we have the privilege and the sacred, and it is sacred, sacred obligation to make things better. And that is an incredible privilege to have upon our shoulders. And we are not blind, because we have so many people and examples that have gone before us, and we can learn from this history. My friend Derwan, who's in charge of the Poor People's Campaign for Dallas, he was just writing to me on something that, I was talking about the removal of the statue, the Texas Ranger statue. Those of you who are not from Texas may not know, Texas Rangers massacred thousands, probably tens of thousands of Native Americans and Hispanics over history. And about 5 years ago, they published their journals because they decided the one Texas Rangers living today very courageously, and I have the greatest admiration for them, courageously published those journals that showed that the original Texas Rangers bragged about how many babies they killed, how many women they killed. They were thrilled with mass murder. And I've been in Rwanda. I've walked on bones. I've hidden with friends inside a tiny little building with Joshua and his father and Alan and Anthony. We were all hiding where a man was walking by with his machete wearing a skull of a little child on his hat. And the people with me were saying, he was one of the killers that massacred this place. And I saw what real evil is. We have that, unfortunately, in our own history. And when we put up big statues and celebrate people that had the mentality, that would be like taking that man with that machete and putting a big bronze statue in the Rwanda airport and have him saying, welcome. How would that make people feel? Every Hutu that came by, how would that make them feel? Probably no better than having a statue of Goebbels in Germany and the airport welcoming Jews into Germany. Probably no better than how the Native Americans in Austin, Texas feel every time they have to drive along Lamar, or the Native Americans in Dallas go visit south side of Lamar and get to see the man who, with his own hand, massacred thousands of Native Americans, men, women, children, elders, left their bodies bloody on the road, and how we name streets after him where he actually committed the acts. There's different ways to view history. There's different ways to view the present. And we can't change history. As I was sharing with a friend earlier, I'm all for leaving the Confederate cemetery where it is. It was people's bodies laid by those who love them in life. That's sacred. That's a graveyard. It should be left alone and respected. But when you look at a place like where the statue of Robert E. Lee was in what is now Oaklawn Park, what used to be called Lee Park, and you recognize that it was actually paid for by the Ku Klux Klan's nonprofit that they set up, and you realize that it was done during the fight, their fight against desegregation, you understand that it was about propaganda. You understand that it was about perpetuating their version of normal. Now we're looking at another normal, and it's about time. It's now the 21st century. What kind of country do we want to be? Thomas Jefferson said he hoped with all his heart people would look back and consider him antiquated. He recognized he was a slave owner, and he said that America was not something that was done, labeled to continue as is. Instead, he recognized that America was a grand, ongoing experiment of humanity, that it would be incumbent upon all of us as descendants of the original founders of our country to take upon ourselves the great mantle of responsibility to help our country evolve into better and better directions. Now we're faced with a crisis, and it is a crisis, because lines have been drawn. There's very little gray right now. You have on one side a government led by Trump who believes in people like me having to carry passports, who believes in putting children in cages, who believes in depriving women of tampons and then putting them in small secluded rooms and as punishment for bleeding on themselves. We have that. a place where people are getting coronavirus, a place where they've been losing children that they don't know where they've been sent. We have that. We have a country that is perfectly fine with attempting to sell off Native American reservation land that was given to Native Americans in treaty, trying to sell it off to buyers for oil and gas and coal. We have a presidency that's comfortable with trying to attack water rights, trying to get rid of, all the laws that keep what we drink clear and pure and healthy and non-toxic. We have a president who is comfortable with inciting angst against Asian Americans, encouraging people through their words to go on and keep hurting Asian Americans because, they're the virus bearers, that will not say that the virus is the enemy and not an Asian people. We have a president who calls people that look like me thieves, rapists, and infestation. Infestation. That's a word that you hear throughout history that never leads to anything good. And one of those places was Rwanda. The other place was in Germany. And again, that brings us back to Pastor Niemöller. Since I've been talking about these things, I've going all the way back. We talked about, Dewey and my friend Letitia and some other people. We did a candlelight march in behalf of Uganda, because we had senators that were trying, like Umhoff, that were trying to get things, that wrote laws trying to encourage a genocide of LGBT people in Uganda. Our leaders wrote those words and encouraged them over there. Our leaders made the lie that said, if you want to have financial help in getting to the oil in your country, you need to push this forward. Instead of saying, this has already been approved, we're going to help you. Our leaders did that. And I told people, if you ignore the fact that our senators did that, and you ignore the fact that they then also said things like, you could do things here and you can handle this problem the way we can't in our country. Do you hear what I'm saying? They were comfortable with saying that they wished that America could allow them to also order the imprisonment and killing of LGBT people. They were comfortable with that because they saw LGBT people as not worthy, less than human. I share that with Hispanic friends, and they're like, whatever. And now they're aimed at. I shared about what's going on with Hispanic friends to my Asian friends. Whatever. And now they're aimed at. I shared what's happening to my Asian friends to others, and now they're aimed at. I could go on down the list. The point is, if you think this is not happening to you, if your brother or sister's human and civil rights are not directly related to your own, then you need to wake up and look at the recent history. Look at the news. Yesterday, a 75-year-old white man was shoved down onto the street where his head opened and bled. And now thank God, he's okay. He's in critical condition, but he's surviving. That was a 75-year-old white man. How many of you feel secure because you're white and you're male, and you're older, and the world has treated you in a privileged way? You should pay attention to that. And if you want to roll your eyes, you can. But look at everything I just said. And remember Pastor Niemöller. I did not stand for that person because I was not that type of person. I didn't stand for this person because I wasn't that type of person. And he goes down the list. And now they're coming for me. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that's the pattern of what has been happening. And we all need to pay attention. We all owe it to each other to defend each other's human rights and civil rights. Because even if I don't like you, your ability to claim your human rights and your civil rights is directly related to my ability to be protected with mine. So please think about these things. This has been what's on my mind. There's a lot of other stuff going on. Thanks to all of you that have given us some funds to help get these masks to different Native Americans. We're serving people from Alaska all the way down to the Amazon. The first batch is coming in. The next batch will be coming in. We are working really hard to help them. We still need to raise about $200,000 more because there's so many. We even have the country Brazil asking for help. I want to thank all of you that have been working with Food Source DFW. We are serving about 5,000 families a week right now because they're struggling with everything that's going on. I want to thank all of you that have been helping us with Green Source DFW because, as we all know, the environmental crisis is not going away despite everything else that's going on in the world. And actually, when it comes to environmental rights, it's so in tangent with people's human rights and civil rights because it's often the poor that get used and dumped on, literally, when it comes to pollution. And abused. So I want to thank all of you that have been helping us with all these ongoing programs that we have to serve our country, our city, our state, and other places around the world. You are helping us make a difference. And I want to thank all those organizations that are also doing such incredible work. I recognize you, Bill Holston, with what you're doing for immigrants. Those children are still in cages. We all need to remember that. I want to thank you, all of those of you over at the Dallas Peace and Justice Center. We need you now more than ever. Thank you to Interfaith Center of New York. The work you're doing is incredible. Ravi Ragbeer, what you're doing up there in behalf of immigrants as well. Poor People's Campaign with Duran, Reverend William Barber, all of you, Moses Boyd with your new Underground Railroad. I could go on down the list. Yes, Tramwell Crow with what you're doing with our X still. So many of us have had to innovate and find new ways to continue serving in this new crazy world. It's not just about Zooming meetings and Zooming speeches. It's about trying to learn how to collaborate and make that difference with each other. I want to thank Vince Pradia, who donated masks for people that were trying to protest recently, with Reverend Peter Johnson. I want to thank all of you. Yolanda Bluehorse, who has been kick-ass, and Isabel, who have been doing so much awesome work with the Mimsy Institute in terms of helping us with social justice and human rights and helping get masks to Indigenous people. I can go on down the list. And of course, my wonderful husband, Joshua, who puts up with all this craziness. But all of you that are doing your own stuff in the world know it is making a difference. And those of you that are feeling powerless and depressed, the best way you can end up getting through that depression is doing at least one thing that can make a difference to somebody, because then you're not powerless. You're powerful in your effort to make that change. So I know this was longer than most, but there is a whole lot going on in this world. And I know it's been much more political than most. But I want to ask you, really ask you in this moment, what person do you want to be in this world? What ancestor do you want to say you were? What role, when you die and you're in heaven and you're looking back down at this crazy moment in history, what does your soul want to say it did in this time? Because it's not about the money we make. It's not about our fame. It's not about our fortune. It's not about our contacts. It's not about our influence. It's not about me, me, me. In fact, in life, here's the secret. It's seldom about you. Everyone always looks into all the spiritual stuff and it always goes, me, because we're all the main actor. We're all the movie star of our own ongoing theatrical production, which is called our lives. But we all have to get out of our way and realize it's not about me. When we understand that, the next step is understanding it's about the we. And the step after that is knowing that the big I is everyone. And when we really get to that point, when truly hurting you is hurting me, you're being hungry is me being hungry, you're not having a roof over your head is my not having a roof over my head, you're not having opportunity is my not having opportunity, when your well-being is my lacking well-being, when we can really feel that, then racism, any kind of bigotry, misogyny, homophobia, all that stuff will go the way of the dodo, and so will the issues of climate change, because we will give a flip about everybody else. That's where we have to evolve spiritually, sociologically, and yes, eventually economically. So those are much more than my 2 cents. As you can see, I've been doing a lot of thinking. And I invite any of you that are involved in this kind of work to be in touch with us. If we can't find an ongoing collaboration that works with you, chances are we are aware of people that, would be a good fit. Because the only way we're going to change things around this world is to work together. So lots of love to all of you. We'll be sharing a lot more content coming in, starting something soon with Ashley Burgess, starting something soon through Mimnazine, starting collaborations with others. And I look forward to sharing it with you and learning from you. And so my biggest thought to all of you is sit back, listen, don't demonize, learn to harmonize. By being in sync with each other enough to realize there's value in the other's voice, whatever that might be. Lots of love to you. Talk to you soon.